She kissed him, right in front of me. I saw everything. Her eyes, his hands, the way she melted into him like she'd never been mine. I froze. My heart shattered in an instant. But I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Not yet. What happened next? It'll destroy everything you think you know about love. I didn't know what to expect when I married Sarah. We'd been high school sweethearts, two young souls entwined, ready to take on the world. At least, that's how it felt at the time. We built a life together, a home, a family, everything that was supposed to matter. But now, as I sit in the living room, something's different. The clock ticks slowly, almost mockingly. The plumber's van sits outside again. It's the third time this month. Funny thing is, Sarah has been acting different too. She's not the woman I married. There are moments when I catch her staring out the window, lost in thought, like she's somewhere else. I've asked her what's bothering her, but she always smiles and says, "Nothing. I'm fine." But I'm not stupid. I first noticed something strange a few months ago. At first, it was subtle, small things I pushed aside. She'd leave her phone face down on the counter, her texts marked with an unusually tight smile whenever she glanced at it. Then came the odd hours, longer nights at work, late dinners, and excuses about needing some space. There was even a change in her appearance, little touches that spoke volumes. The way she'd slip into new clothes I didn't recognize or suddenly wear that perfume I'd never bought for her. But I brushed it off, because, honestly, who would ever think that something so normal could go so wrong? Then, there was Jake, our plumber. He'd been coming around a lot lately, fixing this, checking that. It didn't seem like anything out of the ordinary at first. A burst pipe here, a leaky faucet there. It happens, right? But as the weeks passed, I noticed something. Their conversations started lingering longer than they should. Jake, who used to rush in and out, was now hanging around, making small talk with Sarah. They'd laugh, share stories, and I'd watch from the doorway, trying not to let it show. Now, I don't know what to think. Jake's become a regular fixture in our home, and I've started to feel like an outsider. That's when it hit me. Something wasn't adding up. The tension in the air, the strange closeness between Sarah and Jake. It was all becoming too much to ignore. But here's the thing. I'm still in the dark. I don't have proof. Just feelings. And right now, I need to figure out what's really going on. Is it just my imagination running wild? Or is something more sinister at play? The more I think about it, the more questions I have. Why does Sarah go silent whenever I ask about Jake? Why is she so nervous when I walk into the room while they're talking? Why does she act like she's hiding something from me? I guess I'll have to find out. I know one thing for sure. I can't trust her anymore. But, before I make any accusations, I need to gather the facts. There's more to this story, and I can feel it in my gut. Something's coming, and I'm not sure I'm ready for it. It started with something so simple, so ordinary. The plumber, Jake, had come to fix a leaky pipe in the basement. No big deal, right? Our old house was always needing some kind of repair. But then, Jake began showing up more frequently, more than was necessary, more than I could explain. At first, I figured it was nothing. A few burst pipes here and there. That's what happens when you live in an old house. But as the weeks passed, something started to feel off. One day, I came home early. I hadn't planned on it, but something told me to get back. The house was quiet, and when I opened the door, I heard voices from the kitchen. Jake was here again. I thought it was just another quick job, but what I saw made my stomach tighten. Sarah and Jake were standing close, too close. Sarah was laughing, her eyes a little too bright, a little too eager, and Jake was smiling back at her in a way that felt intimate. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I caught snippets of their conversation. "We should do this again sometime," Jake said, his voice softer than usual. "Yeah, definitely," Sarah replied, her smile lingering a bit too long. I stood frozen for a second, trying to process what I had just seen. When I entered the kitchen, they both looked at me. Sarah quickly pulled away, pretending like nothing had happened. "Oh, hey, babe. Jake was just telling me about some work he's doing down the block." Jake gave a nervous smile and nodded, backing out of the room like he was trying to escape. But it was too late. The seed of doubt was already planted. I tried to shake it off. It could have been nothing, right? A harmless interaction. But something didn't sit right. Sarah had always been so open, so communicative with me. But lately, there was this distance. She had become distant, cold, even. When I asked about her day, she shrugged. "It's fine," she'd say, always brushing me off. Then, there was the neighbor. Tom had always been a bit too observant for my liking, but when he casually mentioned seeing Jake's truck parked outside my house more often, I started to get the feeling that I wasn't the only one noticing. He's really good at fixing things, huh? Tom had said with a half smirk. I wasn't so sure anymore. That night, I had a plan. I decided to stay home the next Saturday, pretending I was going out with friends. I wanted to see what Sarah would do when she thought I wasn't around. I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in the kitchen that day. Sarah's smile, the way Jake had lingered, too comfortable, too familiar. It all felt wrong, like a puzzle missing pieces. My heart pounded with the weight of the unknown, but I had to find out more. So, I put my plan into motion. That Saturday, I pretended to head out with a couple of friends, just like I said I would. I told Sarah I'd be back in a few hours, just some time to unwind. But instead of leaving, I stayed hidden, staying low and quiet, watching the door. Hours passed, and everything seemed normal. No plumber. No strange noises from the house. I started to second-guess myself. Maybe I was overthinking things. But then, around 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. My pulse spiked. I stayed still, listening carefully. I peeked around the corner and saw Sarah opening the door. I couldn't see who it was, but I recognized the voice immediately. It was Jake. I couldn't hear their conversation, but the way they spoke to each other, there was a casual, comfortable energy. It didn't feel like a routine checkup. There was something more there. I held my breath, waiting. After a few minutes, I heard the sound of footsteps and saw them disappear into the living room. I couldn't see much from where I was, but I knew something was happening. It wasn't right. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Then, a moment later, I heard laughter, Sarah's laugh, that laugh I used to love. It wasn't the same. It wasn't directed at me. My mind raced. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew something was wrong. It didn't feel like they were just friends anymore. There was an intimacy in their voices, an ease that was never there before. It felt like the world was spinning around me. I wanted to confront them, to storm into the living room and demand the truth. But I didn't. I stayed hidden, my heart beating so loudly it drowned out the sound of their voices. After what felt like an eternity, I heard the door close. Jake was gone. But Sarah? She wasn't acting normal. She seemed different, more flustered, like she'd been caught in the act. When she came into the kitchen a few minutes later, her eyes were wide, her cheeks flushed. Hey, I said casually, trying to act natural. Who was that? She paused, her eyes darting toward me before she quickly turned away. Just Jake. He had to check something. But I could see the hesitation in her voice. The way she looked at me, guilty, almost. There was more to the story. I didn't need her to admit it. I could feel it. Something was happening between them, something she wasn't ready to confess. I couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at me. Sarah was acting different, distant, evasive, almost like she was keeping secrets. And Jake, our plumber, had been around far more often than was normal. I couldn't convince myself it was just coincidence anymore. Something was off, and it wasn't just in the way she was acting. It was in the way she avoided my eyes, the way she tensed when I asked simple questions. That night, after dinner, Sarah was unusually quiet. We used to laugh together, talk about our day, share stupid little jokes, but now? There was a wall between us. The TV played in the background, but neither of us was paying attention. Every now and then, Sarah would glance at her phone, her fingers swiping quickly across the screen like she was hiding something. Who's texting you? I asked, trying to sound casual, but the tension in my voice was unmistakable. She looked at me, startled, and immediately put the phone down. Just work, she said, brushing it off. But I saw the hesitation, the way she cradled her phone like it was a fragile thing she didn't want me touching. My stomach sank. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe she was just stressed. Maybe I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the woman I married. There was something more, and I was going to find out what it was. The next day, I made a conscious decision. I had to know for sure. No more guessing, no more wondering. I decided to keep a closer eye on Jake's visits, see if they were really as innocent as Sarah claimed. Each time Jake came over, they'd chat in the living room while he worked. The way they spoke, it wasn't just business. It was the little things, the way their conversations lingered, how Sarah's smile was just a bit too bright when she looked at him, the subtle way Jake would stand too close. It wasn't enough to accuse her outright, but it was enough to make me uneasy. Then, one Wednesday evening, I came home early. Something told me to be there. I'd seen Jake's van parked outside, and for a moment, I hesitated. I couldn't help but wonder what I was walking into. I pushed the door open quietly, trying not to make a sound. And there they were, Jake and Sarah, sitting together in the living room, talking in hushed tones. They didn't notice me at first, but when they did, it was like they both froze. Sarah quickly stood up, a little too quickly, and brushed off her jeans like she was caught in the act. "Hey, you're home early," Sarah said, trying to sound casual, but her voice was a little too high-pitched. Jake stood up too, backing away, his face suddenly tense. "Yeah, just finished up. I should get going." I nodded, keeping my cool. "Seems like there's always something to fix," I said, trying to mask the suspicion building in my chest. As Jake quickly left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just walked in on something I wasn't meant to see. A moment that wasn't as innocent as it seemed. I turned to Sarah, my voice steady but firm. "What's going on, Sarah?" She met my eyes for a moment, and then, without saying a word, shrugged and mumbled, "Nothing." But I knew better. I knew she was lying. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. Sarah's face, her eyes, everything about her seemed like she was hiding something from me. It wasn't just the way she acted when Jake came over, or the way she avoided looking at me when I asked simple questions. It was the weight of the silence, the tension that hung between us like a fog that wouldn't clear. The next few days felt like I was walking on eggshells. I'd ask Sarah about her day, and she'd give me short answers, her eyes glued to her phone. I'd try to make small talk, but it felt forced. We didn't connect the way we used to, and it was eating away at me. I wasn't a fool. I could feel it in the air, the distance, the lies, the secrets. But I needed to know the truth. I couldn't let this go on any longer. That Saturday, I decided to do something I should have done earlier. I wasn't just going to sit around and wait for the truth to fall into my lap. I was going to get proactive. I knew Sarah had been acting strangely, but I had to see it for myself. So, I came up with a plan. I stayed home again, pretending to head out for the day, but I remained hidden, waiting. I was going to find out exactly what was going on. I couldn't confront Sarah without knowing the full picture. Not yet. Hours passed, and the house was quiet. It was almost too quiet. Then, right around noon, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. I stayed still, listening. I heard Sarah's voice as she opened the door, then Jake's deep laugh. The conversation was soft, too soft for me to catch every word, but I could hear the comfort in their tone. It wasn't a normal plumber-client relationship. There was something too familiar about it. I stayed hidden, my mind racing. After a while, I heard footsteps heading toward the kitchen, then a low murmur of conversation. I could feel my pulse quickening. Something was happening between them. Something that shouldn't have been happening. Eventually, Jake left, but the uneasy feeling in my chest didn't go away. Sarah was acting different again, more nervous, more distant. When she came into the living room, I asked her what had been going on with Jake. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just fixing some things," she said. But I could tell. I could tell she was hiding something. I didn't know how much longer I could pretend everything was fine. The next few days felt like I was in a fog. The more I thought about Sarah and Jake, the more I found myself doubting everything I knew. The way Sarah acted, her constant avoidance of my questions, her nervous energy when I was around, it all pointed to something, but I couldn't figure out what. I wasn't ready to confront her without proof, but every part of me was screaming that I was living a lie. I decided to take a different approach. If I couldn't get her to confess, maybe I could get Jake to slip up. I knew it was a long shot, but it was the only lead I had. I couldn't just sit around and wait for Sarah to come clean, not when the tension between us was growing by the day. I planned to be home the next time Jake came over. I made sure Sarah knew I was working from home for the day, and as expected, it wasn't long before I saw his van parked outside. My heart pounded as I watched from the window, waiting for them to come inside. They didn't know I was watching. They never did. When Jake stepped out of the van, I felt my pulse race. I knew he was about to walk into my house, into my life, and it made me sick. But I needed to know the truth, even if it was something I wasn't ready to hear. I waited for a few minutes, trying to steady my breathing. When I heard the door open, I moved quietly down the hallway, making sure I wasn't detected. I could hear their voices in the living room again, soft and relaxed. Their conversation seemed so natural, as though this wasn't the first time they'd spoken this way. It felt wrong. I stood there, listening, as Sarah laughed at something Jake said. The sound of her laughter twisted something inside me. It was the same laugh she used to share with me, carefree, genuine. But now it was for him, not me. I couldn't take it any longer. I stepped into the living room, trying to act casual, but every part of me felt like I was walking into a trap. Sarah quickly stood up, her face flushing. "Oh, you're home," she said, forcing a smile. Jake, looking equally uncomfortable, nodded and mumbled something about needing to get going. But as he left, I could feel it, the tension in the air, the secret that had been hanging between us. I turned to Sarah. "What's going on with you two?" I asked, my voice calm but filled with an urgency I couldn't hide. She paused, her eyes flickering away from mine. "Nothing, really," she said, but I could see the guilt in her expression. I knew she was lying. And this time, I wasn't going to let it go. I was at a crossroads. Every conversation with Sarah had felt like an uphill battle, and every glance from her felt like a lie waiting to be uncovered. I couldn't go on like this, stuck in a web of suspicions, afraid to confront her, but knowing that I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The cracks in our relationship were becoming too wide to ignore. The moment Jake left our house that day, I felt it, the last piece of the puzzle clicking into place. It was no longer just about the strange looks or the awkward conversations. It was about the way Sarah avoided me, the way she smiled at Jake with a familiarity that didn't sit right. The way she was hiding something from me, something that was eating away at the trust we built over the years. I spent the next few days, sleepless, restless, consumed by doubt. I thought about what I could do, whether I should just confront her and lay it all out in the open. I had enough evidence. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the way she would touch her phone in ways she never used to. I had enough to know that something wasn't right. But I needed more. I needed to know the full story, the whole truth. And then, on a Tuesday morning, everything changed. I woke up to an empty house. Sarah was gone, and I could tell by the faint scent of perfume in the air that she hadn't been there for long. But it wasn't just that. Something felt off. Her phone was lying on the kitchen counter, screen face up. I hadn't seen it there before, and I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that this was an opportunity one couldn't let slip by. I hesitated for a moment, but curiosity gnawed at me. I picked up the phone. It wasn't locked. It never had been. I scrolled through the messages, expecting to find something I already knew. But what I found stopped me cold. There, at the top of the text messages, was a conversation between Sarah and Jake. And the words, they weren't just friendly. They were intimate. "I can't stop thinking about last night. You make me feel things I haven't felt in years." "I know. We can't keep doing this, though. It's too risky." The text messages went on, confirming everything I had feared. There was no more room for doubt. It wasn't just a plumber coming to fix pipes. It was something deeper, something that had been brewing for longer than I wanted to admit. I put the phone down, my hands trembling. The pain of it hit me like a punch to the gut, but at least now I knew. I knew the truth. And now, I had a decision to make. The weight of Sarah's phone in my hand felt heavier than I could have imagined. The messages between her and Jake were painfully clear. There was no denying it anymore. It wasn't just some innocent flirtation. It was an affair, a betrayal that had been hidden from me for far too long. I stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at the phone, trying to make sense of the rush of emotions flooding through me. Anger, hurt, disbelief. It all felt like a blur. But I couldn't back down now. I had the truth in my hands, and I needed to confront her. I had to get the answers that had been evading me for weeks. Before I could gather my thoughts, I heard the front door creak open. I knew Sarah was back. She didn't expect me to be home, not after I'd told her I was out. The tension in the air was thick the moment she stepped inside. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. Something was about to change. "Hey, you're up early today," she said, her voice sounding too bright, too normal. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was the kind of smile people give when they know they've been caught. I didn't say anything. I just held up her phone. The message threads between her and Jake were glaring in the dim kitchen light. Sarah's face went pale. Her eyes flickered between the phone and my face, and I could see her scrambling for a way out. "Sarah," I said, my voice calm but edged with something I couldn't quite control. "We need to talk." She opened her mouth, but shut it quickly, clearly caught off guard. "I can explain," she began, but I interrupted her before she could go any further. "Explain what?" I asked, my voice steady but growing colder. "That you've been having an affair with Jake? That you've been lying to me for months?" She opened her mouth again, but no words came out. The truth was there, and it hung between us, suffocating. She had no defense, no way to justify it. I want to hear it from you, I said, the anger building. How long has this been going on, Sarah? Why? She lowered her gaze, guilt and fear written all over her face. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice shaking. I didn't mean for it to happen. I shook my head, cutting her off. Don't apologize now. It's too late for that. I stood up, moving past her as she sobbed quietly behind me. I couldn't look at her anymore. The woman I had known, trusted, she was gone. I needed time to think, to process. I had the truth now, but it didn't make things easier. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew this was only the beginning. The silence between Sarah and me felt suffocating after I walked away from her. Her tears, her apologies, they didn't move me. Not anymore. The shock of it all was still settling in, but something else was rising to the surface. Anger. A sharp, bitter anger that had been buried under years of trust, now exposed and raw. I spent the rest of the afternoon pacing around the house, trying to make sense of it all. What had I missed? When had things changed? Sarah and I had been building a life together for years, and now it felt like the ground beneath me had cracked open. How could she do this to me? How could she betray everything we had? I couldn't get her face out of my mind. The way she'd looked at me, guilty, panicked, trying to find some excuse for what she'd done. But there was no excuse. There was nothing she could say that would make this right. I knew that, but I still wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear the words, to see if she would come clean completely, or if she'd just keep lying. The hours dragged by, but eventually, Sarah came to find me. Her footsteps were hesitant, like she wasn't sure what to say or how to act. She stood in the doorway, wringing her hands together. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice fragile. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Then why did you? Her voice cracked. I don't know. I was lonely. You weren't there for me, not the way I needed you to be. Jake, he made me feel like I was wanted again, like I was something more than just the wife. I finally turned to face her, and there it was, the pain, the betrayal, the disappointment. You think that's an excuse? I asked, my voice sharp. You think I don't get lonely too? You think I didn't feel neglected? But I didn't go sleeping with someone else. I didn't throw away everything for a quick fix. She lowered her eyes, unable to meet my gaze. I never meant for it to get this far. It just happened. Just happened. I echoed, incredulous. That's what you're telling me? This wasn't some mistake, Sarah. This was a choice. You chose him over me, over everything we built. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. I need space. I need time to think. She nodded, tears slipping down her face. I understand. I know I've ruined everything. But please. I love you. I'll do anything to fix this. I wanted to say I loved her too, that we could work through it, but I couldn't bring myself to. Not yet. The days following our confrontation felt like they were happening in slow motion. The house, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a prison. Every room seemed to echo with the weight of Sarah's words and the silence that followed. She was still here, but it felt like she wasn't. Physically, she moved around the house, going through the motions of daily life, but emotionally, we were worlds apart. I kept my distance. I couldn't bring myself to talk to her, not just yet. Not until I had a moment to breathe and figure out what I was supposed to do. Every time I looked at her, I saw the woman who had betrayed me, the woman who had chosen another man over me. I couldn't just turn that off. I wasn't sure I ever would. I spent most of my time outside the house, running errands, walking around the neighborhood, just trying to get out of my own head. The air felt different when I was out, like I could breathe again. But the moment I walked back through the front door, I was hit with the same crushing reality. Sarah was still there, still waiting for me to make a decision. And I couldn't make one. Not yet. I knew I had to talk to her. I knew I couldn't keep avoiding her, but I didn't know what to say. What could I say? The damage had been done. The trust we had built for years had been shattered in a matter of minutes. I had no idea how to fix this, if it could even be fixed. Then, one evening, she approached me as I sat in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. She stood in the doorway, hesitant, waiting for me to acknowledge her. I didn't look up right away, but I could feel her eyes on me. I know you're angry, she said quietly. I don't blame you. But please, just hear me out. I finally turned to face her. Her eyes were red from crying, and her shoulders were slumped as if she'd already given up. I wanted to feel pity for her, but all I could feel was the raw ache of betrayal. You've said all you need to say, Sarah. I replied, my voice colder than I intended. You've made your choices. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. I know, and I'm sorry. I don't know how to make it right, but I want to try. Please, just give me a chance. I stared at her for a moment, trying to read her. Was she sincere? Or was she just saying what she thought I needed to hear? I can't just forget this, Sarah, I said, the weight of the words sinking in. I don't know if I ever can. She nodded, as if she'd expected that answer. I understand, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust again. I didn't know if I was ready to believe that. The next few days passed in a blur of silence and half-hearted attempts at normalcy. Sarah tried to reach out, to talk, but I wasn't ready. The pain was still too fresh, the wound too raw. Every time I looked at her, I was reminded of the betrayal, of the way she'd thrown our marriage away for a few stolen moments with Jake. But there was also a part of me that wanted to believe her. She was sorry, right? She said she was willing to do anything to earn my trust back. And deep down, I wanted to believe that we could find a way through this. We had years of memories together, years of a life built on love and commitment. Could one mistake, one terrible choice, really destroy all of that? Could we rebuild? I wasn't sure, but I knew that I couldn't make any decisions in the heat of the moment. I needed time. I needed space to think, to process everything. The anger was still there, but beneath it, there was a flicker of something else, something that felt like maybe, just maybe, there could be a way forward. The next Saturday, I found myself in the kitchen, drinking my coffee alone. It was a rare moment of peace, just me and my thoughts. I heard the front door open and close, the soft click of Sarah's shoes on the hardwood floor. She was home from running errands, and I knew this was my chance to make a decision. She walked into the kitchen, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with unsaid words, heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. Finally, Sarah broke the silence. I know I can't erase what I've done, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. But I'm here, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. I just need you to tell me what you need. What can I do to show you I'm serious? I turned to face her, searching her eyes for any trace of the woman I used to know, the woman I thought I understood. She was standing there, vulnerable, pleading, and for a moment, I could see the desperation in her eyes. I had to make a choice. I had to decide if I could ever trust her again, if I could ever look at her the same way. But the truth was, I didn't know. And that terrified me. I don't know, Sarah, I said quietly. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I don't know if I can forgive you. But I'm willing to try. Her face softened, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I'll do whatever it takes, I swear. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. This wasn't going to be easy. It was going to take time. But I wasn't ready to give up just yet. The days stretched on, each one blending into the next. I tried to keep myself busy, but no matter what I did, I couldn't escape the thoughts that lingered in the back of my mind. Sarah's presence in the house was a constant reminder of what had happened, and though she was trying, though she was asking for forgiveness, it didn't feel like it would ever be enough. We were living in limbo. There was no going back to how things were before, but there was a part of me that wanted to try. The weight of her betrayal still hung heavy in the air between us, but I found myself asking, could we find a new beginning? Or had the trust been broken beyond repair? Sarah was doing everything she could to show that she was sorry. She was apologizing constantly. She was trying to connect with me in ways I hadn't seen before. It wasn't the same, though. It couldn't be. The woman I married, the one who swore she'd always be faithful, was now a stranger to me. But still, she kept trying. One evening, after dinner, she came to sit next to me on the couch, a hesitant look in her eyes. I've been thinking, she said quietly, about what you said. About needing space, needing time. I know I can't rush you, but I want you to know I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, and I'll wait. I'll wait as long as it takes. I looked at her, trying to read her face, but I couldn't decipher what I was seeing anymore. Was this guilt? Or was it real change? Could she really mean it when she said she was going to work for this? I don't know if I can ever trust you again, Sarah, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. And I don't know if I want to try, but I'm willing to take it one day at a time. That's all I can promise right now. She nodded, her eyes full of understanding. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. I just want you to know that I'm here, and I'm committed to showing you I'm serious. I'll prove it to you, even if it takes the rest of my life. The words hung between us, uncertain and fragile. But something about her sincerity, whether I was ready to believe it or not, struck a chord inside me. Maybe she wasn't the same person I thought she was. Maybe she'd never be that person again. But could we build something new? Could we rebuild trust, even after everything? I didn't know, but I was willing to try. For now, at least. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing day, Sarah kept trying. It was like she was walking on eggshells, always looking for ways to make things right. But I could see the strain in her eyes, the weariness that came with trying to fix something so broken. And I was starting to feel it too, the exhaustion of living in this fractured space between us. We were going through the motions, but it didn't feel like a relationship anymore. It felt like a fragile experiment, one where neither of us knew the outcome. Every day, I woke up and tried to go through the motions, acting like everything was fine, but the truth was, I was waiting for something, anything, that would tell me whether we could truly recover or if I was just wasting my time, holding on to something that was already gone. One evening, I came home late from work, a little tired and mentally drained. Sarah was in the kitchen, as usual, but tonight, something was different. She was cooking dinner, humming softly under her breath. She looked up when I walked in, her face lighting up with a genuine smile, one that didn't seem forced. "Hey," she said, her voice warm. "I made your favorite tonight. I figured we could eat together, just the two of us." For a moment, I almost forgot everything that had happened. It was a fleeting moment, but it was enough to make my heart ache. Sarah had always been good at this, at making me feel like we could be okay again. I stood there for a moment, just looking at her. She had always been the one to put in the effort, to make the house feel like a home. But now, every time she smiled, I found myself wondering, is this real? I sat down at the table, still unsure of how to approach her, of how to approach us. We ate dinner in silence, and while it wasn't uncomfortable, it was strained, like there was an invisible wall between us that neither of us could break. As I finished my meal, Sarah put down her fork and looked at me. "I know this isn't easy. I know I've hurt you in ways I can't undo. But I'll keep trying, for as long as it takes. I'm not giving up on us." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to tell her that I wasn't sure I could believe in us anymore. But the other part of me, the part that had spent years loving her, wanted to believe her. I wasn't sure where the truth lay between those two parts. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I said quietly, my voice rough with emotion. "I don't know if I can ever get past this. But I'm willing to try. Maybe that's all I can give right now." Her eyes softened, and she nodded. "That's all I can ask for. And I'll keep waiting, however long it takes." As she cleared the table, I sat there, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. But I wasn't ready to give up either. Maybe that was progress. The days had blurred together, and the uncertainty between Sarah and me was becoming suffocating. She tried. She really did. Every day, there was a new gesture, a new attempt to make things right. But with each one, I felt the weight of her betrayal more deeply. The trust we once had was shattered, and no matter how hard we both tried to piece it back together, the cracks were too wide, too deep. I kept waiting for the moment where things would feel normal again, for the hurt to fade, and for forgiveness to take root. But that moment never came. I was stuck, suspended in a space between what I wanted to believe and what the reality was. Then, one afternoon, Sarah called me at work and asked if I could come home early. She said she had something important to talk about. My first thought was to ignore it, to keep avoiding the hard conversations. But something told me I needed to face it, to see where we stood, to hear what she had to say. When I walked into the house, the atmosphere was heavy. Sarah was sitting at the dining table, a bottle of wine in front of her. She wasn't smiling. Her face was pale, and her eyes looked swollen, like she'd been crying. Immediately, I felt that knot in my stomach tighten. "Sarah, what's going on?" I asked, my voice laced with concern but also a sense of dread. She looked up at me, her hands trembling as she slowly pushed the glass of wine away. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago." I froze. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken truth. I felt my pulse quicken. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, gathering herself. "Jake and it wasn't just an affair. I wasn't just lost in the moment. I thought I was in love with him. I told myself it was just a mistake, a phase, but it wasn't. It was more than that. I've been running from everything, from our marriage, from myself. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I couldn't breathe for a moment, the weight of her confession sinking in. She hadn't just betrayed me physically. She had emotionally checked out, given a part of herself to someone else. I stood there, unable to speak, processing the truth that was now crashing down on me. I never meant for it to get this far, she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. I'm so sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I can't keep lying. I have to face what I've done. I was numb, unable to respond. She had just torn open a new wound, a deeper one. And now, I was left to decide if there was any chance of healing it. The air between us felt impossibly thick, and I stood there, frozen, trying to process everything she had just said. It was as if time itself had paused, and in that moment, there was nothing but the weight of Sarah's confession hanging over us. I had known the truth for a while now, at least in part, but hearing it from her lips, raw and unfiltered, changed everything. I didn't just feel betrayed anymore. I felt small, insignificant in a way I hadn't expected. She hadn't just slept with Jake. She had given him a piece of herself that was meant to be mine. And I couldn't understand how it had come to this. The room was silent except for Sarah's soft sobs. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if words could fix anything anymore. Part of me wanted to scream, to let out all the anger that was bubbling inside, but it felt useless. What good would it do now? Why didn't you tell me sooner? I finally managed to ask, my voice hoarse. Sarah wiped her tears, her hands shaking as she looked up at me. Because I was afraid. Afraid you would hate me. Afraid you would never look at me the same way again. But I can't keep living with this lie anymore. You deserve the truth. I couldn't look at her anymore. Not the way I used to. The woman who sat before me wasn't the same woman I married, and I didn't know if I could ever see her that way again. There was a part of me that wanted to believe her, that wanted to forgive and move forward, but another part of me was broken beyond repair. I took a deep breath, running my hand through my hair. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said quietly, the words feeling heavier than I thought possible. I don't know if I can move past this. I understand, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't expect you to. I've lost your trust, and I don't know if I can ever get it back. I didn't answer. Instead, I just turned and walked out of the room, not knowing where to go, what to do. My mind was clouded with too many questions, too much pain, and no clear path forward.